This is the Inc. Denver Climate and Sustainability Committee meeting for June. I've got Jane here, who's my co-chair, Keith, who is the president of INC Denver. And tonight we are gonna focus on trees and urban greening, and some of that includes National Wildlife Federation Wildlife Habitat Certification for Maureen. Councilwoman Torres is going to talk to us about green alleys a little bit. If you've never heard about green alleys, you will tonight. And then Lindsay Cutler is going to be talking about the community forestry program and community connectors. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. And somewhere in between all that, I'm going to remind you all about the Greener Denver platform and Inc.'s endorsement of that and voting. So what I'm going to do now is I'll pass it off to Maureen, and I'm controlling her.
Beautifully said, Adam.
What's that?
I agree. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Actually, you know what? We don't have a lot of people here. So, I mean, not an enormous amount of people. Let's quickly go around and introduce everyone. I'll call on you and just let's do name, neighborhood, and what sustainability thing you're the most passionate about. And I'll go to give you an example. And I'll say I'm Adam Meltzer. I'm in the Wash Park East Neighborhood Association. And I would say one of my big things is water use and water efficiency. So Maureen, I'll pass it to you and then I'll call on everyone. Oh, you're muted. And when I call on you, unmute and then talk.
Okay, Maureen Hanrahan, and I'm in the East Wash Park area also. And at least for during this summer, I'm passionate about working this wildlife habitat that I'm going to talk about today.
Great, thanks, Catherine.
Catherine Smith from West Washington Park. We just planted a pollinator meadow on our slope. So good luck with that.
Oh, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Potts. I live in Rosedale, Harvard Gulch, and my biggest concern is recycling still.
Okay, Lucia.
Hi, I'm Lucia Brown, and I live in the Baker neighborhood. And there's so many. Probably land use is my biggest issue. Sprawl, density, transportation. So all of those land use things.
All right, Keith.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keith. I live in the Sloan's Lake neighborhood. I think that I check a lot of boxes for things that I'm passionate about when it comes to sustainability. I think currently I'm very passionate about greening Denver and getting back to some of these efforts to make our city more livable and green, and dealing with heat islands in Denver.
Thanks. Dean.
Hi, I'm Dean Tebby. I live in the Harvey Park neighborhood, and my focus right now is on food forests and composting.
Great. Tom.
I'm Tom Strobel from Highlands, and I am most interested in trees, keeping them watered and alive for the first 3 years after they get planted. And I see a lot of shortcomings in that. And I'm also very interested in composting.
Great. Is it Ione?
Ione Hartley. I'm with Cherry Creek East, and I'm most interested in maintaining our parks and recreation. We only have one park and it's sort of being overwhelmed.
Yeah. Okay, Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian. I live in the Congress Park neighborhood. I'm really heavy into cycling, but I'm also a lover of trees. I'm actually in the community forester program right now.
Awesome. We are going to go to Jim next. Oh, my boxes are moving around. Hello.
Hi, I live in Baker Park area, and I'm also worried about land usage in the city.
Okay. Andrew.
Hi, my name is Andy, and I live in West Colfax. I'd say probably for me, mobility and air pollution are kind of the two parts that I think most heavily about. I live right on Colfax, so think about them a lot.
Great. Councilwoman Torres?
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. Councilwoman Jaimie Torres. I live in the Villa Park neighborhood in West Denver. I think a couple that are strong for me are local food production, particularly home gardens, and returning our waterways back to community.
Kimmy. Kimmy,
I live in the Baker's neighborhood, and I'm really worried about land use.
land use. Okay, a lot of land uses. Corey. You there, Corey? All right,
I think land use is a big one.
yeah, I'll come back to you. Lindsay?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Cutler. I'm with the Park People and definitely passionate about trees, really about education and awareness about planting and stewardship, trying to increase the average lifespan of the trees and promote responsible outdoor water usage as well. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Sean?
Sean from Villa Park on the west side, and I'm interested in transportation and land use.
Okay, Jody? Okay, we'll try Gertie. There, Gertie?
Hi, I had to unmute myself. I just walked, my name is Gertie Grant, and I live in the southern part of the Spear neighborhood, which is also part of West Washington Park neighborhood. It's also part of the Lincoln Broadway, whatever they're called. And also I'm a member of the Baker neighborhood. My concern.
Oh, I love the Baker neighborhood. Just want to pop in there so that.
Me too.
A lot of Bakers.
I'm here because I really care about street trees, having run the Denver Digs Trees program for a number of years. And I just came from a tree conference in Fort Collins. And one of the things I found out was that you should not leave those green tree irrigator bags on the trees after they are empty. They should be removed to allow the tree's trunk to breathe and not set up areas where bugs can get into the tree.
All right, thanks, Gertie. Judy, we're almost through, everyone.
Hi, everybody. It's really great to be here and to hear these things. What's important to me is I think one of the burning issues for me is keeping our tree canopy and how we support neighborhoods who don't have it. I'm in historic Montana.
What about land usage?
And we're really blessed with a mature tree canopy and creating our own urban forest. But I think we need to support that across our city, and especially in places that haven't had the benefit.
Great, thanks, Judy and Rhonda.
Some of our neighborhoods haven't.
I think we're gonna move on.
There's just a lot of people from Bakers here. If you're from Bakers, can you please raise your hand? I'm trying to get a rough count.
My hand's raised, but you want like real life hand or through the
Well, let's get to that after, Jim, because we got a lot of stuff to get through.
We could just put
All
our.
right, I'm excited.
Put it in the chat. Yeah.
Put it on your name, rename yourself, and you can put your name
There
on
you
it.
go, Lucia. Thanks.
How do I rename myself?
Oh, the top right of your box, there's 3 dots. Just right click on that or left click on it, and it'll tell you can rename it.
Okay, thank you.
Your box. Yeah, you got it. All right, we're gonna get started here. Georgia, did you have a question before we get moving? You're muted.
I got missed in the
Oh, what? Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm Georgia Guernsey. I'm from City Park Friends and Neighbors. I heard in a recent conversation with Scott Gilmore that there was a new DPR policy of converting non-recreational expanses of bluegrass into native grass and perennial meadows. And that the south meadow of City Park was going to be part of this new effort. And I haven't gotten anyone to confirm it or found the policy in writing. And I love the idea. A lot of water's being wasted on our south meadow, which is a huge expanse in the southeast corner of the park. And it is not used much. It's south of the museum. So I'm interested in that and other things.
Great, thank you. So anyone I missed, just put your name in the chat with your neighborhood and what you're passionate about in terms of sustainability. I am gonna give it to you, Maureen, to get us started. I think that before actually, someone said who's running the committee. I'm now the chair committee with Jane Potts, who's the co-chair. So we're revving this committee back up, and we would love any suggestions or comments, not right this second, but if you have them, put them in the chat, and we're always free to have a conversation with you.
That was my question. I was asking actually because somebody had mentioned zoning, and two questions. Is there a zoning chair? And two, the other question is there still a parks committee, or has that been rolled into this committee?
I can answer those, Adam. So the Parks Committee is not currently running, although it could make a comeback. I think, obviously, I think everybody knows that Inc. has been going through some transition over the last year. And if there's anybody that's interested in parks and wanting to help kind of get that committee restarted, we would.
I'm interested.
Thank you. If you could put your information in the chat, we'll definitely take that. If there's anybody else that's interested in helping to get a parks committee back up and running, we are definitely willing to have some conversations around that. We are at our number one priority, or at least mine is, as the new Inc. president this year, is kind of working through some of the things that we've needed to get taken care of over the past year or two, especially we've during COVID. I think that was a real challenging time for Inc. ZAP kind of went on a hiatus as of last December, but we are trying to bring ZAP back with hopefully some good news on the ZAP front in the next month or two. I think we're hoping to get ZAP kind of back up and running. We have some interest from some folks.
Do you need any financial help with that? Because I'd be willing to donate.
Yeah, we're always looking for donations. So definitely shoot me an email or put in the chat, and I'm happy to talk with you. But if anybody's interested in ZAP and helping to put some ideas together, we do have 2 meetings on the that we're working on in October and December of this year, and trying to get some make sure that we have things in place to get those going on. Those would be probably looking at the first week of October and the first week of December. And we're going to talk about overlays in one of those meetings, and then some potential housing zoning issues in the next. So if you're interested in any of this stuff, please throw your email in the chat, and I will definitely reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. And then Jane, I know you have to leave, so before we end tonight, so do you want to just announce the awards ceremony, since we're already behind anyway?
Thank you. I do. So the awards ceremony will be Wednesday, September 13th at Racy's Brewery. And the notice went out today that it's time to nominate your neighbors and friends in your neighborhood who have done something above and beyond during the last 2 years. Since we didn't have a ceremony last year.
Where can I nominate?
we will be taking nominations for people who have done something in their neighborhood for the past 2 years. The details are on Denver INC.
I could probably win that, honestly.
So if you'll go to denverinc.org, the information is there. And Jim, if you want me to, I will send you some information in the chat about how to do that.
Okay, I would like to nominate Kimmy Head.
Well, we don't do that in public.
Yeah.
We do that in an official notification. So I'll send you the information on how to do that. And thank you for your interest.
I appreciate that.
Great. Thanks, Jane. So Maureen, finally, let's get you going here. And just let me know when to move the slides. I got it. Okay.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you this information. It's a product of COVID.
You're welcome.
It's a product of COVID work at 2 summers ago, just looked at the South Side yard and said, we've got to do something about this. So I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I sure learned a lot, and I'm glad to share as much as you're interested in. So the South
If I have any
Side.
outsider information, can I add as we're going along? Because I have a certain expertise in this area.
Yeah,
Sure.
but Jim, I'd love Maureen to just be able to give her presentation, and then we could do questions and discussions after.
Okay.
Because this is very specific to her,
Okay.
her project. Go ahead, Maureen.
So as I explored what options there were and had noticed when I was in Berkeley on one trip that there were a lot of these certified habitats there. So I explored that. There were 2 certifications at that time. Audubon did one specifically to birds, and then the wildlife habitat, which is a lot broader than that in terms of insects, bees, butterflies, and animals. And I think Audubon still is a resource, but I don't think it has a certification. So I opted to do the certification through the National Wildlife Federation. So next slide. And this is what they require. It's pretty easy to do and flexible, but they focus on top of sustainable practices in yard. They focus on 4 areas that you need to address, and they list a lot of options on how to do that. So, but it really is helpful to look at the reasoning behind that, and learn a lot as you go through the process. It probably just took me, well, just in rebuilding the side yard, we just emphasize these areas, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that. So these are the food, water, cover, and places to raise young are what they require you to provide a document. It's all based on self-report, so no one shows up to certify you or anything. The next one. So this was the space. It had lots of, black plastic over the years and was a mess. So our first project was to just prepare the soil. And this is the same, your sustainable practices in terms of what you build into it. We put in a drip system and eliminated the noxious plants, and then really enhance the soil. The next area is planning what we wanted to plant in it. So there's a lot of literature out there that talks about using native plants and shrubs and grasses, but specifically the flowers because of the bees. And oftentimes Colorado plants have the richest pollen and nectar, and some of the non-native plants are not even able to be pollinated at all. So it's important to look at native. The Colorado native plants are also a little bit more hardy in terms of the heat and the sun. So compared to the ones you see in the nursery. Next page shows a listing of the different kinds of native plants. It's there. If you Google just Colorado native plants or native plants by zip code. There are a lot of resources that you can look up a plant or they can give you listings. So I've listed many of those that are available, and the same thing as the cherry or the fruit bearing plants. I didn't
Excuse
look
me?
at grasses.
Do you have any sources for this?
Yes, it's good. I have it, and we'll post the whole thing, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Talk at the end, huh? Okay, so these are you probably recognize some of these. I'm trying on milkweed to raise it from seed, but it's challenging. But they're all perennials, and so and you have to kind of reinvigorate them at times. But they're flowering now. So next one, please. Then you need a water source under their requirements, and it shouldn't be stagnant water. So because now we don't usually have a brook running through our yards, and at least in Wash Park, I have a little bird bath there in the corner in the bottom. And to keep it from being stagnant, you can find small solar pumps for under $20, and you just set it in there. You don't even need to put batteries or anything in it, and it just bubbles. So it keeps the water from becoming stagnant. Although that picture looks like it's kind of stagnant. I just refresh it every couple days. Because even the bees, we always think of bird baths, but the bees need water too. Okay. Next one, then it's protection of the young. Options are birdhouses and bee hotels. I still am waiting to have any of them move in, but I'm being patient about it. So, there are a lot out there. And in fact, the National Wildlife Federation sells the bee hotels, and as well as several of the birdhouses. The next one is, we put up a protective fence along the sidewalk just to keep dogs and people out. And this is probably at the end. That I took that this year. So you could see how much the bushes grow that I put in. We've got a lot of serviceberry and several variety of bushes that are bearing fruit. This isn't a requirement though. So, and then this is kind of unsightly, but the whole idea of some kind of shelter. And this is a slash pile just in the back corner to allow any animals, small animals, to be protected from predators. They also recommend, as you probably have heard, leaving the dried plants, sunflowers especially, standing over winter so that the birds can get to the seeds. Really kind of a wildscape. So it dries out and it looks very wild during the winter. So, but it's an important protection. And then the sustainable practices that I think we all know about, being careful about the use of water, getting non-native plants out of there. Although I didn't eliminate, I have a trumpet vine that isn't a native, but it's too big to move. But the vast majority of the plants are Colorado native and perennials. So of course, no pesticides, and use compost to get the soil. So no black plastic either. So it was a fun project, and what I wanted to share with you is why. The next slide talks about why certifying has been important. It's really neat because young and old can do it. It's a fun thing to share in researching the planning. You just learn a lot about the purpose behind the habitats. You get connected with the National Wildlife Federation, who keeps you blasted with information. Outside, probably the one thing personally that was most satisfying for me is when I am out there, neighbors stop at me all the time and want to know about it and inquire. So you meet a lot of neighbors, new and old. I live near South Gaylord, so people are walking by all the time. It's really kind of fun to be able to hear their interest. I'm waiting. I've got a rabbit that is sheltered. There are a lot of bees out there now. So I'm starting to see that. I'm not sure what other creatures. I'm not interested in adding more squirrels, but and I'm in a neighborhood that the birds will be challenging because the smoke from the pizza place on the corner is, I think it's not appreciated by the birds. A block away, you can hear a lot more birds. But it does something good for the environment. What I didn't mention at the beginning about certifying that I think is neat is that it doesn't need to be just your home. It could be a school to choose to do it as a project, or an organization, a church, or a community organization. So it's also something that could raise awareness for a lot more than just individual. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you all bring to light Jim Samuel's comment, please? We need to acknowledge that and take a look at that together.
Can we just hold off on questions until she's done with the presentation?
I'm almost done. Yeah.
Thank you.
How to next page is how to obtain the certification. It's trust-based. Again, as I said, it's very adaptable. So if the requirements are on the website, and I've got that listed for you. There's a walkthrough checklist that talks about those 4 required elements, but it gives you lots of choices. So for example, here under food, it isn't just putting out a feeder, but it could be planting berries, putting fruits out, suet.
I just have a quick question.
Sure. I'm almost done. I just have one more page, and then
let's just let Maureen. I know you guys are burning to ask questions, but let's just let Maureen finish.
Well, I'm glad they're asking
it's
questions.
great.
Adam, can you please mute up?
So the application is online. It's $20, I think, still. And then if you want to get a sign like the sign we've seen here, it's a little extra, but it's worth it because it's fun to be proud of it. And it shows your commitment. So on the last page, I've Adam said that we would make this available to you because there's a lot of information here. But the websites, both for the National Wildlife Federation, I put in Audubon because they have, even though they're really just focused on birds, they really do have a good checklist that you can go through in terms of preparing your source. Extension Services is really a good resource. There's a native plant society in most communities, and their garden tour is incredible if you're interested in native plants. I purchased a lot of mine at Harlequin Gardens way up in Boulder because it's not online, and they have, at least from what I saw when I set this up 2 years ago, they had more expertise and more native plants and advice on how to manage the native plants and bushes. So then obviously there's a book that Audubon produces as well as the Gardens Library, but I think you can find a lot of information online. I've not been to the native plants demonstration garden in Loveland, but I'm going to take a trip up there. I hear it's really interesting and probably will enhance what I have in place. So that's it. So we can do questions. Hopefully we've got time.
I think the Bakers community needs more birdhouses. More of a statement than a comment, but I thought it was needed.
Thank you. Beautifully said.
Okay, anybody else have questions before we move on to?
Does anyone else in the Bakersfield community have any other questions?
Okay, great. Well, we're going to move on to Councilwoman Torres. We'll also have time for questions after all 3 presentations, hopefully. So Councilwoman Torres, I'm going to stop sharing. Are you able to share, or do I have to? Let me see.
No, I don't have a presentation, Adam.
Oh, you're just going to talk?
Mm-hmm.
Great. All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks, Maureen, for sharing that information. I really appreciated it. And mine is pretty simple because our what I was asked to come talk about was an item that we included in our budget letter to the administration in May with our priorities, one of which is focused on our natural environment. And we have a variety of different policy recommendations for funding for 2024 that are included in that. But one of the new things that I proposed to council that made it into the letter was a more, excuse me, a more dedicated effort and initiative around green alleys. We have some references here and there in the city, in the city's Dottie website around greening, green spaces, green infrastructure. All we really offer at this point are some guidelines that were written probably 2 administrations ago around green gutters, green alleys, a variety of different recommendations around those things, but no real initiative around what do we really mean with that, and how do we actually implement it. And I think we're talking about 2 different ways of really activating our alleys, and it is through activation, so making them spaces that can be usable infrastructure and not just the places where our trash service and recycling service pick up. But that they're actually spaces that help with stormwater, with actual green infrastructure, and are welcoming spaces for community to use. So some of that is kind of the generality of what encouraged other council members to support an idea like this. But it'll definitely take a lot more support and interest from the administration, from community, and whether or not this becomes something that the city actually takes on in future years. And a lot of other cities are taking a much more active role in our alleyways and actually turning them into usable space, safe, walkable space that actually is functional. The reason that this became a high priority for me, I am the council person for West Denver. And in West Denver, we have major projects happening now that just started to get funding concerning the Platte River, our gulches. And our gulches are really our only community park space in West Denver. So the ways that in which water makes it to our gulches and the water from the gulches to the Platte River are really important to us. They're quality of life issues. And so this is one of the things that we want to begin a conversation with Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, particularly under a new mayor who might have some interest and ideas in innovative ways of activating urban space and really making sure that it meets a number of different needs for neighborhoods and community. That's about it.
Councilwoman Torres, I just had a quick question.
Hang on just a sec, Jim. It is super preliminary because we're proposing this for consideration for 2024 and would take a lot more conversation with the administration at that time if they decide to put some investment in it. But even if not, I'll keep working on how we actually make something like that happen if we're going to be investing hundreds of millions of dollars in the Platte River, Weir Gulch, and communities activation and interaction with those spaces in my district. And I know that we are not the only district with gulches and with waterways, and whose communities may actually flood periodically too. And the amount of rain that we've been getting, I think we're witnessing a lot of those moments recently. So I'll stop there. Jim, what was your question?
May I talk now?
Go for it, Jim.
Councilwoman Torres, I was just concerned about the price of these green alternatives in residential and private areas where the city government cannot provide financial assistance. How would they deal with that?
Yeah, it's undetermined at this point. A lot of what I've seen in other cities is they are utilizing where improvement has already got to happen. It becomes a green infrastructure opportunity where they can incorporate it while they're already updating some of the some of the existing infrastructure that was maybe already kind of queued up for improvement. So some things like that may get piggybacked. I think that is actual cost savings.
As a
But
councilwoman, you should probably know.
undetermined at this point, because we've just got to get it on the radar as a potential interest area, and work with the department to see if it's something that can be implemented.
Thank you for answering that question.
You bet.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Councilwoman Torres?
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering a little bit too, if this is, you know, the way you mentioned it.
I just had another
Councilwoman Torres,
question.
Hang on,
sorry.
Andrew's asking a question.
It sounds like, you know, kind of the program or the idea that you folks are contemplating right now is sort of a city initiative and city dollars. Do you also see this as an opportunity for maybe like new design standards? I know sometimes when lots are redeveloped, you know, they have to dedicate a couple extra feet to sort of widen the alley, you know, or of course, when lots are redeveloped, especially in West Denver, they have to expand the sidewalks.
I'm pretty sure Jim has a question, so you can
Possibility
mute
for
up
a
now.
design standard like that?
Yeah, what a great point, Andrew. Thank you
Excuse
for
me,
mentioning that.
can you please stop interrupting? Andrew was talking and you.
Sorry, guys. I think Andrew raised a really good point. We see that downtown, and I think I don't know if folks have been to the Dairy Block. You know, it's not what we need everywhere, but it certainly is one of the ways that they've activated and widened an alleyway for a purpose like that. I think it absolutely could be. And one of the advantages in putting it into new development is they can, you know, ideally build it in as a component of what they're already doing. And if you're in West Colfax, right, Andrew? I think I heard you say that.
Yes.
That some of those things are things that we're actively seeing. Projects that include an alleyway to kind of cover the breadth of an alleyway and what they're building. So we're absolutely seeing, I think, opportunities that could have utilized something like that.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Councilwoman. And we're gonna move on now. I think if there's no more questions for Councilwoman Torres. Thank you. Lindsay, are you able to take control and put up your presentation?
Let me try.
Give it a shot.
It looks like screen sharing is disabled currently.
All right, let me try and do this and see if it works now.
Yep, that looks great.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. I was able to, hold on, there we go. Introduce myself real quickly in the beginning, but my name is Lindsay Cutler. I know it says Kim on the screen, but Kim and I work really closely together at the Park People. And so I've got my screen all funky here. Let me see. I'm the program director here at the Park People. And I'm just super happy and honored to be here with you all today. And I know, you know, it's kind of an evening and you may be tired and have things to get back to. So I will try to keep things pretty efficient. I'm just always love talking about our organization's mission and our work in the community. And specifically, I'm here to talk about the Park People's sort of growing role as an urban forestry community hub and expansion of our community forester work in Denver, and hopefully kind of tie it into what that means for you all. It's a super exciting time to be in urban forestry in Denver. Trees are just getting a ton of long overdue attention. There's funding for trees. We've always seen them as an important nature-based solution in the fight against climate change. We tout them as keystone species in our urban ecosystem. Without them, our health can be severely compromised in urban areas. And we also see them as benefit multipliers because with them, all aspects of physical and mental health improve: habitat, air quality, water quality, you name it, the works. And right now, what we're seeing in Denver is that many people are joining Team Tree and beginning to recognize the importance that these trees serve in our community health and that they've long been taken for granted. With that energy comes fantastic potential for successes as well as failures. With the park people's decades of experience in urban forestry in Denver, we're sort of ready and willing to help raise new leadership, share our decades of knowledge, and facilitate building community capacity to do this work well. And that's what we're calling the Community Hub. So the Park People, 54-year-old nonprofit working with communities to plant trees and improve parks for a healthy, resilient future. Let's see, real quickly, Denver today is home to over 700,000 people. It's growing rapidly, and you can see the effect of this in the closer suburbs like Baker and like West Colfax as we densify. And many parts of Denver still have a really robust tree canopy, and we have a beautiful, wonderful system of parks and parkways. And these parks and trees together collectively function to bring important ecological balance to our built environment and make our city livable. This one, anyone who's seen me present or anyone at the Park People present has seen this slide. Essentially, Denver's got 2.2 million trees. They provide over $122 million in community benefits annually. Some of these benefits are the air conditioners of our city. So they cool our homes and other buildings with their shade. They serve the functions of a multi-million-dollar stormwater facility, slowing the flow of water through our landscapes and slowing flooding. They filter out pollutants from our air and water. They serve critical functions, mitigating and adapting to climate change by sequestering carbon and cooling and protecting the health of our most vulnerable people. They protect biodiversity and provide habitat for birds and pollinators. And then in addition to these environmental services, they also provide critical sort of economic, health, and social benefits to our communities, such as increasing property value and cleaning our water. And you know, students and workers demonstrate restored cognitive function when they have views of green spaces. So they're important for our physical and mental health. And of course, tree planting activities provide valuable opportunities for community building. So this is really what we're focusing on here. Urban forestry is also called community forestry, and part of that system, an important part of that system, are the people that live in it. Unfortunately, right now, Denver's forest is actually declining. So it's currently 60% stocked, meaning that there's room for 40% more trees than there currently are. And that number is going down due to a lot of different pressures. So conservative estimates have room for over 100,000 more trees in Denver on public and private property. We think there's actually room for significantly more than that. The pressures of development, obviously, and densification are causing some canopy loss and threatening our canopy. There's also pests. Many of you may have heard of the emerald ash borer. It's threatening 1 in 6 trees in Denver, or 330,000 total trees will ultimately be lost to this pest. And then there's climate change, and climate change comes in the form of increased wildfires and the sort of 7-fold increase in days above 95. And these projections from the city that I'm showing you are old. We are already much further along in experiencing these consecutive days over 95 in Denver. And it's also extreme temperature swings. So those sort of 60-degree drops that we see in the fall have pretty significant impact on our tree health and survivability as well. So you can see the trees everywhere in Denver are up against a lot of threats. And then of course, they're not equitably distributed to begin with. We haven't planted trees equally across the city, and that is due to decades of disinvestment in our, what we call our inverted L. So you can sort of see here, these lighter green neighborhoods have much lower tree canopy, and by and large, that is also correlated with a lower per capita income in those neighborhoods, and that is due to the policy of redlining in the 30s and 40s, which creates the city's sort of visible landscape as we know and experience it today. And that, of course, correlates with heat in the cities. So where there are no trees, there is extreme heat. And again, the lower incomes and all of the sort of negative health consequences that are associated with those two things. Just a little visual picture of what that looks like on the ground. Here's one of our lower canopied neighborhoods in Denver. You can see a lot of sun and that pavement where the sun baking down on it all day holds all the heat, and then it releases it back into the air at night. And that's what causes these hot nights, which a lot of us experience a lot of sleeplessness and discomfort when our bodies just can't reset and cool off. And then, of course, by contrast, this is here in Wash Park. You see, nice canopied streets. The shaded asphalt makes a big difference, comfortable sidewalks, and 2 mature trees placed properly on your property can serve the function of 2 air conditioning units. So these are really important, both aligning our streets and also on our private properties. And, that's what that translates to in the temperature. So, a good 13, 14 degree difference between the sunny side of the street and the shaded side of the street. So here at the Park People, we know there's so much work to be done, and we know that the challenges and needs before us require that we approach the growth and care of our forest in a proactive and holistic way that mobilizes the capacity of our community. The best person to care for a tree is the person living right next to it. Trees do not spring up on their own here, given our climate, aridity, and altitude. Each tree here is on life support, meaning that each tree has to be intentionally planted and nurtured. We need to support trees on public lands. We need to support both the proactive planting of trees and the care and health of our invaluable existing trees. So we really want to place a huge emphasis on the stewardship of trees. And we also need to be planting huge numbers of trees, planting at scale and focusing efforts to ensure tree equity. So bringing those neighborhoods of low canopy cover up to meet the city's standards. And to do this, it's important to build out and support the robust engagement of our whole community, because it will take the involvement of our whole communities to support the many needs of our forest. We engage the philanthropic community in contributing to our work. We work with businesses to sponsor and staff planting projects. We mobilize our volunteers in planting and caring for our community trees. And we're working to help grow the urban forestry workforce through our Tree Force program in order to make sure that we have the workforce to care for the millions of trees we have and want. And of course, the Park People works with to engage the community residents on the ground in their neighborhood. And by engaging our whole community, we hope to really create diverse green spaces that are healthy and thriving and representative of the people who are living in these spaces. And we're not the only ones out here doing this. The urban forestry space in Denver has seen a huge increase in organizations getting involved in tree planting, which is awesome. That is exactly what we need. It's a good thing there's so much interest and attention on the important role that trees have to play. But this list doesn't even reflect the whole picture, since new organizations are jumping in what feels to us like every day. And you can see that there's a need with all of these people interested in planting trees and all of the various threats to our trees' survival for a coordinated and effective effort to scale this work that we're doing. So we really want to place, emphasis on efficiency and reduction of duplication by, establishing interorganizational coordination. We want to break down information barriers by being a centralized location for residents to turn to for information. And that might not be us being the answer to their problems. That might be us saying, hey, talk to the city about this tree need. Talk to the Nature Conservancy about this tree need. So us just being a centralized informational resource. We want to ensure the dependability and success of tree planting and stewardship projects. And this is the really critical one here. With so many people interested in tree planting, there's a high likelihood that, you know, they may not already know the best tree planting methodology, you know, the best trees to choose, how to run a tree distribution. And we want to see high success of everybody that gets into this field, because ultimately the goal is planting hundreds of thousands of trees that live. And when residents see that success, they believe in trees and they plant more trees. And so we're really doubling down on expanding community capacity through education and training. We also just want to provide ongoing year upon year support, because planting a tree is an investment in, you know, the next generation. And so we don't want to see trees being planted and people then leaving, you know, like organizations that help plant them, then leaving the community. We want to be there year upon year to say, we can answer your questions and help you navigate, you know, the growth and care of your tree. And again, just connect people to resources in their neighborhoods that are doing that. This is this funky draft. This is my maiden voyage with this graphic. And I know I'm probably going over, I'm pretty chatty. But essentially this is my little community hub graphic, and in the middle is the hub. And this is kind of how we're seeing ourselves functioning and how we've been able to start functioning. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Denver's Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency Office, which we have been very lucky to receive 2 grants through them that partially funded the sort of launch and expansion of our community forestry program into building this community hub. So through this program, we've been able to hire 7 community connectors and or community climate ambassadors. They have different names based on the grant in 5 different neighborhoods in Denver. And these are paid part-time positions. We are working with people who either have leadership experience in their community or who are looking to sort of grow as leaders in their community and are also committed to, you know, promoting trees in their neighborhoods. So we currently have paid community connectors in Globeville, Valverde, Barnum, and West Colfax. We're hiring in Villa Park. And then we have really strong unpaid relationships in 5 Points, East Colfax, and some other neighborhoods of the city. And, you know, what we want to do is just keep growing this momentum. It reaches our lower canopy neighborhoods in ways that our previous community force, and we are still doing community forester, absolutely, but in training volunteers, we're able to reach more affluent neighborhoods. In paying community connectors, we're able to reach almost all of Denver's neighborhoods. So it's just a really important feature of this. And I feel like I'm going in a terrible order because I haven't presented on this slide before. So I'm just going to do one overview, but essentially the park people, you know, is sort of seeing itself as the community hub. We're seeking to hire a resident arborist that can make site visits and consult on tree care for residents. We're continuing to work with our community foresters and our citywide volunteers. And then we are hiring paid community connectors in our low canopied neighborhoods throughout Denver and seeking to continue and grow this till we have small little community cohorts who are able to plan tree planting and stewardship activities in their own neighborhoods over time. And I'm happy to answer questions on that afterwards. So a little bit about what this looks like. Some of our community foresters are already doing this work. They're leading canvassing efforts for Denver Digs Trees, letting people know about affordable trees in Denver. They are hosting their friends and neighbors to wrap and unwrap trees in the fall and in the spring. They're spreading mulch on trees. So there's all sorts of different scales of ways that community connectors can tap into our network and their local network in order to just bring attention and mobilize resources to care for the trees that are right around them. The deeper community connector relationships, the ones that are really out there launching tree planting programs in their neighborhoods. That's where we, dive in with the paid position. We provide thought leadership. We provide some expertise on what trees to select. We provide some guidance on how to host and run a distribution, and they bring their vision. We can host with resources, community visioning parties. This can include some landscape design elements, just idea generating sessions. So this is a little bit about what that looks like. We can do in-depth community planning where we identify kind of the areas that we'll be doing outreach in, areas where we have connections or high amounts of trees are needed, and really dive deep with residents. And then of course we can host and organize a community planting day to, make a big difference. It's like I don't want to take extreme community makeover because they do wonderful work in Denver, but it is a little community makeover that we do. And what that does is it really brings people together and creates new friends and new bonds in the community. I think we say blossoming friendships and deep rooted connections. So that's just a little overview of the Community Forester program, specifically our sort of vision for building out this community hub with a mixture of paid connectors and unpaid, community forester volunteers. And depending on, your needs and interests and your community's needs and interests, we have resources at different scales and different levels of funding. We always have information. We always have affordable tree programs through Denver Digs Trees. We can provide on-site expertise. We can provide connections to local efforts that align with your community vision. And like I said, limited geographically funding for positions. And what we see from this is tree planting projects that have a higher rate of success. Tree planting groups with a paid leader ensures succession so that the initiative continues. Leaders have continuous access to thought leadership, education, and financial resources. And communities, all of them in Denver, receive ongoing investment to care for their outdoor spaces. Because like I said, the best person to plant and care for a tree is the one living right next to it. So that is it for my time today. I'm happy to take any questions.
I like that you have Gertie's quote up there.
I'm a major Gertie fan. I don't know that she knows this, but I was fangirling when I saw she was in the room today.
Oh, Keith, do you have a question? I see your hand up.
Yeah, I do, but I feel like there's some questions in the chat as well.
Oh, you want me to, let me see.
So somebody's asking, maybe Tom, I don't know if you just want to ask your question.
Well, I could do that. Nice presentation, Lindsay. Could you talk a little bit about the carbon cost of getting a tree to the planting site and how important the stewardship of that tree is to protect that investment?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'll just lead with the average lifespan of a tree in Denver is 7 years. It goes up if you take downtown out. I'm not sure how far, but the math is that it on average takes 25 years of a tree living and breathing in the ground for it to repay its carbon cost. So not just the initial production and transport and planting of that tree, but the end game too of the removal and disposal of the tree.
You said 25 years?
I said 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I just got 2 trees delivered and planted in front of my house, which is amazing. They came and they just planted them, and one of them was almost 10 feet tall, which I was pretty shocked by, and we're taking care of it, and they're doing well. So.
That's fantastic. That must have been the Be a Smart Ash program.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
They do such great work.
Keith, do you want to chime in again, or do we want to ask about Judy's? Judy, that wasn't really a question, or?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. So why don't I ask the first one, and I'll wait on the second one. Lindsay, is there So I was sitting in our local RNO meeting last night, and I don't know if you've been to one of these, but most, ours are filled with every single week. There's a new developer wanting to do a development project and trying to get the sign off from our RNO on it. And this is a multi-unit space that's been low income. It's south of Colfax. It takes up half a city block. There's 8 probably 60 to 70 foot tall full growth trees on the property. They want to move the setback lines and take these trees out and do kind of a remove and replace, or they're going to pay to the city fund. Is there a quantifiable kind of equation or number that is given for removing these trees from someplace like south of Colfax, where these are probably helping significantly with urban heat island issues in that area, and removing those trees is probably not really on the not removing the trees, I'm sure it is the norm for these developers.
I think that's a great question. And I think that's something the city is actively looking at right now. We don't have aggressive tree protection ordinances currently in Denver. We have that sort of small government Wild West mentality in many ways. They've released the Urban Forestry Strategic Plan Survey. I think it's on a pause right now, but it will be available again. And that's a question they're asking, like, what sort of tree protection ordinances should we put in place in Denver? There are places like the city of Austin that require that for, the caliber, the diameter of the tree that you remove. So say you remove an 18-inch diameter tree, you need to replant that caliber of trees. So 9 2-inch caliber trees. And, that's their tree ordinance, and that's designed to discourage the removal of large trees because of the expense and space requirements to put in 9 replacement trees. And also, if you do remove one, hopefully you can get those to survive. And I do support and encourage an ordinance, and I know the city's going to put some thought into that. I can't speak on their behalf as to what that answer will be, but that is a priority for them to be thinking through that. I'm sorry, that's not probably the most helpful answer.
No, I think that's great. And I think just, understanding where the thinking is at and some ideas that might be out there for this, because it seems like this is going to be the norm. Otherwise, going forward, is that, affordable housing is going to be the priority over, older trees that are, could provide another apartment or something like that.
And driving down West Colfax is definitely a clear example of that. And, my planner friends from grad school are saying, well, densification is what we need in, areas that are close to the city. And then we work closely with Yvonne Lopez in the Valverde neighborhood. I'm not sure if Councilwoman Torres is still on the call here, but, I know Yvonne works with Councilwoman Torres, and they've been really active in shaping the West Area Plan, and those development considerations were put into that plan because of residents' concern. So being a part of that process for any area plan that affects you definitely has huge benefits and huge returns on the investment of your time.
I can add to that too, Lindsay, that there are elements of the Denver Green Code, which people might know about, that also have trees talked about in terms of setbacks and age of trees and the use of trees, and kind of incentivizing people to just not remove them right away and to think about how they can keep them in the project.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of goes into a little bit of my next question too, which is that trees seem to be a little bit of an afterthought, not a little bit, a complete afterthought, when it comes to city planning projects, and that includes like Dottie. And I'm wondering if there's, discussion or if the park people can kind of get more involved in this, or another group that, we had these great new bike features put in the Northwest Denver. And I know it's an experimental thing that Dottie is doing, but when you kind of look at this compared to other cities like Seattle or Portland, you know, a traffic circle on a small street could have a tree put in it versus just concrete and adding the heat island effect. And so it doesn't seem like there's a lot of coordination when it comes to, you know, thinking about our urban environment. And, you know, if we're losing green space in one area, how can we make it up in another?
And that's the exact reason that we're really talking so much about this community-based approach, because we do feel like if we have residents on the ground that are aware of what's going on in their community, we can be a facilitator and, you know, try to connect them to the right organization, resource person, you know, to have those conversations ahead of time. But, you know, without that, without your knowledge of what's going on in your traffic circle and your bike lane, we can't do anything. Like, we're much stronger when we build these connections and are able to use our voice in a timely manner.
Thanks. I got another question, but Gertie has her hand raised.
Yeah.
And we give deference to Gertie here.
Stop, please. I've been at this a long time, and my interest right now is preserving some of the trees that were planted when I ran Denver Digs Trees. What I am concerned about is some of the rezonings that try to move from residential high-rise to mixed-use high-rise, reduce the setback. And so there is a greater setback if it's residential zoning high with, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 stories versus mixed use. If it's mixed use, it moves the building right up to the edge of the sidewalk, which makes it much harder for a tree between the sidewalk and the street, if there even is room for that, to survive. And I think it's something that, again, Lindsay has brought up. It's the importance of the local folks being involved in those local rezoning requests to stand up for the trees that grow along the street and benefit all of us.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And that participation in the area plan process, I think, has those effects of saying, hey, we want this, you know, zoning here, or we need to seek a variance so that the setbacks are there. Because with the city's emphasis on 5x15 tree wells for tree survival, you can see the pressure needing a bigger tree well in order to get approval to plant a tree and having a smaller setback. So you start going into all those lovely planning conversations about lane widths and you know, sidewalk widths and things like that.
So I just say, as you know, participant in some of these meetings, that the way that this comes forward to us is that you look at the agenda, and typically we look at it about, if you're coming to a meeting 10 minutes before the meeting, and you see that somebody from developers coming, and they're going to make a presentation, and then we're going to take a straw vote afterwards to see if our RNO supports them. And I don't think the RNO has, or the members of the RNO have a lot of time to kind of process all the different zoning, you know, levels and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, you know, kind of during these meetings. I don't know if it would be a good idea for the park people and, you know, maybe this committee or somewhere else to come up with a, you know, like a 2-page rubric that we can hand out at RNO meetings so that people have, you know, a resource at least that they can use and refer to help, you know, guide the conversation on protecting these trees.
That's a great suggestion. And I'll bring that to forestry too, since their, you know, just purview is more of that street space. But I like that idea, just having a resource at hand, a guidebook for making those decisions.
And maybe also, Keith, just slowing down the voting process so that you don't have to vote right after.
Yeah.
You can do both.
I mean, I think that, that's kind of individual to each RNO and how they kind of operate and whatnot. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, Adam.
Georgia, did you have a question?
I did. I wasn't going to bring this up, but we seem to be talking about this conundrum of the need for affordable housing and developers holding great sway over at least the past administration, and the difficulty in hearing citizens' voices. And the park people did not support the citizens who came to you on multiple occasions to ask for your support in our fight to preserve the Park Hill Golf Course land. And I wonder why. And I'd also like to ask if you support that, now that there's been such a resounding vote in favor of preserving that land, if you support the idea of the Park Hill Golf Course land becoming a regional park.
I think I'm glad you brought this up, and I have to admit I'm not as knowledgeable on it as I should. I know that the reason that I was given early on in the process was this is an issue for our advocacy committee, and our advocacy committee decided that, they didn't know enough to take a stance and to get involved.
We
And
made 2 or 3 presentations, so. And what we said to you about the importance of trees and the canopy and the environment and the heat island effect, you spoke to that eloquently. Those were the points we were trying to make with you. So I'm just, everything, there's politics. I understand that.
Yeah.
And, but I have been curious because I thought it was such a perfect issue for you.
Yeah, and I totally appreciate that. I think the follow-up comment that I have is when I came on board in 2019, the Park People's Board was not okay with us saying climate change. The amount of change and growth that has happened in the last 4 years feels like we're not a new organization, but we have clear messaging and clear ability and permission to take the side that we believe is correct in many places. And that has been a growth curve for us as we have navigated just the tricky internal politics that happen with older organizations. And so we're not perfect in so many ways and have spent so many years just trying to learn and grow, and that comes with it looking back and saying we didn't make the right choice there. And while I wasn't involved in the Park Hill conversations, and I really can't speak to what went on in deciding that we wouldn't take a stance on that, I can say that what we do is continue to listen and continue to learn and continue to grow. And just that growth that I've seen in the last 4 years, to me, gives me so much hope in the promise and future of our organization to be able to be on the right side when those important issues come up.
It's a great answer. I appreciate it. And I hope you will support our effort to now turn that into a regional park. The land is estimated, its fair market value is only $6 million, and the city shouldn't pay more for that. We have the 2A money, and we have a situation where it's set up to be a park. So anyway, you may hear from me or others again, and thank you for your great response. I appreciated that. That made sense to me.
Awesome. And thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate that.
Great. Let's take one more question and then we'll start to wind down. Jody, do you want to ask your question, or should I 2 more? He's got something burning a hole in him. Jody, do you want to unmute and ask your question, or should I just ask it? Okay, I'll ask it. So Jody wanted to know, can anyone address the mandated HOA request for each homeowner to spray for the beetles? I question the idea of just spraying everything routinely? So who can answer the possible need for this action? I don't know, which HOA? That's a great question, Larry. Which HOA are you with, Jody? I guess you could just start the conversation, Lindsay, about talking about spraying in general, right?
Or, yeah, I'm sure other people can chime in too. I know that spraying is effective. I also know that well cared for trees are able to fight off infestations and are not often attacked by pests in the ways that trees that aren't properly watered and cared for are. So I would recommend looking deeply at what else is affecting the trees before moving to a chemical defense.
Great, thanks. Keith, you want to round us out here with the last one?
Sure. So I think I've asked you this before, Lindsay, a while ago, and I've asked other city officials about this. And I appreciate all the focus on trees, but it seems to me that there are a lot more options out there for greening our city than just trees. And I don't think that I found anybody that's doing this work. And maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like there's a coordinated effort. It seems like there is, lots of opportunities out there for greening our infrastructure and greening, innovative things like green walls. And there's, I think I've been to, fortunate enough to travel to some cities around that, there's tons of green space and tons of green efforts going on that are way more than just trees. And I actually get angry every time I drive by a pergola and I don't see a vine on it. And I think that there are just, a lot of efforts that can be done. And I just don't know if anybody's doing that.
I think there's more momentum there that's on the verge and in the works. We had a meeting with Denver Water recently, and they're, really working on this sod reduction. I think I'm calling it they're like use less water campaign. I'm like useless grass, but that is not the name of their campaign. It's not useless grass, but they do want to be actively promoting the removal of sod that you only step on to mow. And they're working with Garden in a Box to provide alternatives and some education about how to remove your turf grass and how to replace it. So the pollinator presentation was just spot on, so great. And that's the kind of Garden in a Box plug and play. They're trying to make that easier. We're talking with them about pairing a tree with your Garden in a Box, and can we do a tree distribution where those two things are both on the menu? So those are the conversations that are happening, and Denver Water's got the momentum and the money and all of that. So I feel like it'll be successful and should be citywide too, so that's a pro of a Denver Water approach too.
Great, thanks.
All right, I'm gonna move off this and wrap up. We got a few minutes left. Lindsay, thank you for a comprehensive, great presentation. I appreciate you being here. Maureen, thank you for your presentation. I know Councilwoman Torres had to go. Sean, I see your comment about developers versus trees. Maybe that's a future topic with city folk that are dealing with those issues every day, and maybe we bring Lindsay back. I don't know, but yeah, we get a lot of these topics are just they can go deep, right? And then we can talk about them for a long time. The one thing I want to mention before we shuffle off is that Inc. Denver is working on supporting the Greener Denver platform. For those of you that don't know what the Greener Denver platform is, I'm going to put a link into the chat. We are asking that RNOs, the delegates from the RNOs, take this platform. It's a one-page letter. And bring it to their RNOs and discuss supporting it. It's about basically the gist of it is about supporting, asking the new candidates and the new mayor to support existing sustainability plans that are within the city, and to make sure that we're implementing those plans before starting to write new plans and spending more money on policies and plans. The vote, you should have gotten an email requesting that you vote if you're a delegate. And you will have, I think, until July 7th before we close that vote. And we do need a quorum and an overwhelming amount of yeses to be able to just support this platform. Keith, do you want to add anything to that?
Just that I'm gonna put my, if you're a delegate or you're a member of your RNO, and if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to come to your RNO and present or talk about this to anybody that wants to. I think one of the things that we're trying to get at is that most of our communications with folks between meetings happens via email, and I think a lot of it gets blocked by like Gmail filters and things like that. And so we're just trying to make sure we get the word out about this. Inc. has deliberately over the last couple of years changed our bylaws to increase the threshold that we need from RNOs to take a stand on something, and rightly so. And I think to do that, we were trying to develop some better communication methods to get the word out about different things to RNOs. But I'm gonna put my email address in the chat, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact me.
And our emails are also on the Inc. Denver website under the Executive Board Committee page. I really appreciate everyone showing up with their genuine selves tonight. I apologize for the interruptions earlier in the meeting. Sometimes catching up with that takes time. And I also encourage you next time, if you feel more comfortable, to put your cameras on, because we love to see everyone's faces and get to know each other, even if it's in the computer world. The next meeting is going to be on August 17th. Same time, and we're going to be talking about carbon sequestration, urban greening, and embodied carbon. So for those of you that are interested in continuing to talk about this topic, we'll have a little bit about that, what we talked about tonight, and just kind of get into a little bit of the science of carbon sequestration and embodied carbon, which is in the buildings that we build. And we'll get into that. That should be interesting. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you all in August, and have a good time during your summer. Until then, have a good night, everyone.